Hello! So today I have a problem and I want to try to solve it with you joining me on this journey. So the problem is, long back I've created an automation that creates posts for me that go on LinkedIn. And my goal out of that automation, which I'll show you in a second, and this episode is not about that automation, is to try to generate content on my LinkedIn that is well done and based on specific topics or topics in specific domains that are so interesting that it will get actually more engagement to my page, just for me to test how good really AI can be used to help drive these kind of engagement on such a platform like X, for example, or LinkedIn. And I did it in a way where it had a kind of a back propagation. I don't know if the term is really fit here, but basically a feedback loop where I do the posts on a weekly basis, and at the end of each week I try to get a summary with all the metrics of each of those posts in a table. I feed that table back to the AI. I ask the AI, basically OpenAI, to review its latest prompt and then revamp or re-update the prompt to be more fitting based on what it reads in the trends of these posts. So basically, if a certain topic is more interesting, it will update its own prompt to be focused more on that area and test for the week after, and so forth. But it did not work. So I tried to optimize prompt for the assistant that I use in this automation. I tried to do it all, and I couldn't really crack the code for it. But then I remember that I have all of these .srt files, which are basically transcripts of my YouTube videos that I create, where I talk for hours. So collectively, they are hours and hours of me talking. And then I thought, could I use that type of unstructured data to fine-tune the OpenAI model to actually improve that assistant and get it to speak in a language or a tone closer to the way I would actually type or talk, and maybe that will sound more human, more relatable. Again, covering certain topics I want to cover on my LinkedIn, and would that actually solve the problem and start driving engagement on my LinkedIn and potentially X? So today, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to work with Replit, because creating structured training data to fine-tune the model is not something you can just prompt in. So I will go to Replit, try to create an application that would take those SRTs, work with OpenAI, and then create the training and validation data for me. We're going to then go to OpenAI dashboard, fine-tune the model and test it and see where we go. If it works, that will be amazing. And I will deploy all my automation again to test it out with this fine-tuned version of my model that I use for the automation, and then see how that goes, and I'll keep you updated. But for now, if you're new to this channel, I'm all about technology and AI. I try to help people who are not technical particularly to do more with the technology, with artificial intelligence. So this is your community to learn, do, train, fail, succeed, improve the way you do things in your real life and your professional life. And with this, and without any further ado, let's get started.
Subscribe to Daddy's channel, The Mic.
Now, just to give you a taste of the automation I'm talking about before we actually go and start working on improving it, this is the set of zaps that I use for that automation. These first 3 zaps are basically zaps that take care of those posts I'm telling you about. So what I do is 3 days a week, I do general things about general topic linked to AI. And what each zap does, it does an online research based on a certain topic I feed it with. Sometimes it goes to YouTube, gets some transcripts, ideas, creates a post, usually a text post, and that goes to LinkedIn. One focused on AI updates, which goes usually on a Monday, and one just focused on my day job, which is procurement supply chain, which goes on a Thursday. The rest of the days are just generic topics linked to AI. Now, you see those 2 as well, backing up what we do in these 3, is I have 2 zaps that are all about intelligence. So both of them collect information from my LinkedIn page and LinkedIn profile, just to capture the trends of impressions, views, whatever is necessary for to be able to judge the performance of these posts. And the one where I get actually the per post intelligence really looks at everything from interactions, comments, clicks, likes, whatever, views, and it's post-wise. And all of that is done and fed again to OpenAI with the existing prompt or assistant instructions. And then what OpenAI will do for me, it will redesign that prompt or assistant instruction, and it will introduce a new one. And for the week after, the new one will be the one being used in these automations, the top 3 ones. So it will basically modify how it's creating those posts. It's been running for a while. It's very smart. It's self-controlling. It's fully autonomous type of automation. The problem is it's not achieving the desired goals, which is big growth, more engagement with people beyond, the normal comments, which I do from my mobile, but just having that kind of post that will hook people in, get them engaged in my tone. So people will say, yeah, this is something that Samer might write. That's not working. So this is what we're trying to solve today. If it works, I'm going to come here and fix it, and then we'll test and see how that goes. To start with, just for you to understand what fine-tuning is, let's just quickly jump to the documentation of OpenAI. And as you can see on the screen, this is the section around fine-tuning. And I did in the past a video about fine-tuning, but this is maybe more detailed, more complex task to do. So it says fine-tuning lets you get more out of your models available through the API by providing higher quality results than prompting, ability to train on more examples that can fit in a prompt, token savings due to shorter prompts, lower latency requests. So fundamentally, what we do here is we add another layer for the model to be able to operate at higher performance or closer to our goals. And you can put, basically, this is just giving it so many examples that it will be closer to your end goal out of the responses from that model. And this is exactly what we're going to do. Now, if we scroll down into this documentation, it will have all the details, the models where you can actually do fine-tuning. Not all models accept fine-tuning, and other details about the structure, yada yada. We're going to use all of that documentation later on. But this is just something, if you're interested in it, go do it. There will be some cost associated with fine-tuning through the interface or the dashboard, or even when you do it through an API. I don't think it's anything significant. Let's hope that, again, the value will outweigh the cost when it comes to doing this job. I don't think my job will be a heavy one. Now, you can do it through code. We're going to do it actually through the interface of the dashboard of OpenAI. So there is some code concerned done by AI on Replit just to get us this training data. You need some training data to be created. And my problem is my data is not structured. I have transcript of me speaking. I want through AI to actually develop that training and validation data. So the training data is basically the data I will use to train the model. Validation is something that I will use to validate that it was trained well. So the first thing I want to do is have a really high quality prompt that I will use with Replit agent. And I'm going to actually go to Claude to beautify or improve that prompt for me to get the best performance out of Replit agent. And I'm going to Claude because Replit agent uses Sonnet 3.5, the new model. So it makes sense just to go to Claude to perfect that prompt. Now, I did some work on the prompt just to save time while I record this video. We're going to read it together. I'm going to plug in some other pieces of information to it. Then I'm going to take it to Claude, improve that prompt, and then we'll go to Replit to create our validation and this training data. So let me just go to my prompt as I created it. So this is the prompt. And I usually, when I know I'm gonna write something long, a long prompt, I usually do that on a Word document so it doesn't by mistake get lost. And then I copy paste it into wherever I want to take it. So let me enlarge it a little bit so it will be much easier for you folks to read it. We're gonna go through it. I will need to plug it in with more information and some pieces of data. And then we move forward with actually building the data we need to fine-tune the model. So I read it word by word. I hope it's not that boring, but it's interesting. You could learn a thing or two, at least from my style and prompting. Below is a prompt for Replit agent to build me an application. Review the below prompt, ask for any needed information if necessary, and eventually provide me with the optimized prompt for best result out of a Replit agent that uses the Sonnet 3.5 new Claude AI model. Now, this is the Replit agent prompt, again, just for it to understand. You are an OpenAI AI engineer experienced in fine-tuning. I have an OpenAI assistant that was optimized through prompting as much as possible without meeting desired results. Its role is to write me LinkedIn posts based on provided context, to write in a human-like tone and writing, which was always a challenge. I want to use .srt files, which are transcriptions of my videos I recorded in the past that contain my way of expression for fine-tuning my OpenAI assistant towards desired results. Below, I will share OpenAI fine-tuning instructions and training data structures, also the current assistant instructions for context and goals. So basically, I'm giving the current assistant instructions. It might give the model better understanding of what I want to achieve. I need you to create a simple application that will use the .srt files data in a provided vector store. So I don't want a complex application that will take all of those documents and then create a retrieval augmented generation type of setup with vector stores and then do the work that I needed to do. Actually, on the interface in OpenAI, we can create those vector stores. So I'm going to do that with you, do it manually. It will take seconds. And then only I plug it into this application so it will do what I need it to do without going into that hassle. So I keep it simple for it to have high probability of working 100% through the Replit agent, basically AI building that application without me bothering. Okay, so I'm just asking it or stressing on this fact with the prompt that I'm giving to Replit agent potentially later. So again, I need to create a simple application that will use .srt files data in provided vector store and their structures to build for me a training and validation data sets, each in separate .jsonl file. Basically, this is a JSON format type of file that is required in the fine-tuning in OpenAI to fine-tune my model. Okay, so let me continue. Such data should have comprehensive and more than enough sample numbers to get the best outcome out of fine-tuning for both the training data, which in theory should be the 80% of the total data sample, and validation, which should be the 20% of the total training data samples, should not be less than 150 and can be as much as the app deems necessary. The application shall use OpenAI API to get help in analyzing the .srt files, doing this in chunks or loops to operate within known context window limitations, and build the semi-synthetic training and validation data. I'm calling it semi-synthetic because it's going to go through the way I talk in my transcript and then decide on how to build those kind of training data samples that it will use later on, or I will use later on to train the model. So it's not fully actually like my type of doing posts. If I had so many history or long history of posts that I written myself 100%, I would actually go to use that because that's a very robust source of information or data to train the model or fine-tune it. I don't have that. Most of my posts were part of this automation. I'm not a big poster on LinkedIn beyond the automation. So I want to create that semi-synthetic type of data out of loads and loads of me talking basically in videos and having it transcribed. So carrying on, the semi-synthetic training and validation data from the unstructured data in the .srt files, because that data is unstructured, in the following vector store. So when we create the vector store together on OpenAI, I'll get that number and I'll include it in the prompt. But again, just to make sure I don't have any errors, I'm continuing with this. Use vector store to retrieve all .srt data while building the training and validation files that once are complete are to be downloaded to my computer, i.e. I have created the vector store, so no need to perform the job by application. It only needs to access it as defined. When building the application, use Replit secrets to store OpenAI API key, vector store, and any other necessary. So basically I'm saying even the vector store, because AI could get the vector store number or code wrong, even if I put it in the prompt. What I wanted to do is create a secret or variable basically in Replit, so I can later on check it or actually add it into the secret or the variable as I take it from OpenAI dashboard. Now, this is an important part, which I always use in my prompts when I build projects, especially that involve code. Include in the application code comments that explain each section and what it does, and add a robust debugging steps for troubleshooting. You would want to see that kind of console debugging step by step as the application runs. If you face errors, you can actually copy those, paste them into the Replit agent or any AI basically, which will have it understand what's happening on the implementation side of the code it gave you, so it can fix the errors within the code that it has provided. Again, here finally I am focusing on one of the points I already covered. The application is to use OpenAI to take and analyze my .srt transcripts and fundamentally decide on a training and validation data that would help fine-tune a model to speak like me, or as its main role to actually write like me in my speech, like tone, flow, terms, etc. When it creates posts for me across social media, particularly LinkedIn. So basically I'm saying, yeah, this is the reason I wanted to speak like me, write like me when it posts something for LinkedIn. So two things I need to add, or three things I need to add to this prompt. The first one is the OpenAI fine-tuning instructions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the fine-tuning documentation in OpenAI docs. I'll just copy the whole thing and I'll feed it to the prompt. I'll put it in the prompt just for it to have that full understanding of the structures that it needs to build and all the details that it might require. This is an easy way to do it. You can actually just give it the sample that is here in this document and you're good to go. But I just want to show you how that works with the whole thing. I don't want to work with the bias part. No need to have all of these things here. So this is the code part actually. I don't need that. So this is, I think it could be part of what I need in terms of data quantity. So let me cap it to here. Okay, so I'll just copy this whole thing, go back to my Word document. I'll add it here and I'll just paste. I have everything. And then I will have to go to my assistant instructions. Let's go back to the browser. To have that kind of feedback loop that I told you about in the beginning, I used Airtable. So each week it goes to Airtable, which has the posts and the performance of those posts that I collect on a weekly basis. And it takes all of that intelligence and then it pulls the last week's actual prompt that was used for the assistant. It will review it with all of that data and analytics, and then it will create a new one. And it will save it into Airtable. Why? Because the next time those automations run, they will go to Airtable to get the most recent one this automation created through AI, basically the improved assistant instruction, and it will use it to override the standard instructions that you see on the OpenAI assistant as I set it up. If you're interested in how I do this automation or how I do this thing, like the feedback loop, write me a comment in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to do it for you. But for now, let's carry on. So let's go to Airtable. So you can see how it works. It's very simple. So I have actually two assistants that I use, but the one we're talking about today is the post writer here, the LinkedIn post writer. So you can see previous prompt modification, latest prompt modification. So every week I'll take this one here, which has been used for the past week, assumingly. I'll move it to the previous, and then I'll create a new one and I'll place it here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open this whole thing and then we're going to go back to the document and paste it. Now I can use the one in the assistant itself, but I want to carry the automation as a whole. I want to see how it works with the feedback loop and if this fine tuning helps the case. So let's go back again to OpenAI and create the vector store now. So if you go to OpenAI, you go to your dashboard, and then here, if you look at the left side, you're going to find everything you need actually for this. One of them is fine tuning, which we will use later, but one of them is as well storage. Here you have files where you can actually upload files or create vector stores. So we're going to create one. So let's hit create here. You can see it. So let me name it. So I will name it my SRT vector store or VS. Okay, so that's the new name. So now we'll have to add files to this vector store that we've created, and we can do this simply by clicking this button here. And what I can do here is drag or drop or just click here to upload. So let me go to my folder where I actually, you can see this folder here. It's called Captions Store, where I actually save all my captions or SRT files in one place. And you can see I have a lot of them, and I'm going to take actually all of them. Let's go crazy and see what we get. So I'm going to open all of those files. I think it's because those are in SRT format, it is failing. Okay, so the failure that happened is because I was loading .srt files, which is not accepted into the vector store. So I had to go and change all the file extension from .srt to txt, which will not affect the file because even SRT files are essentially text files. So let me again try to upload the new files. So you can see here, these are the SRT fine-tuned files in txt. Everything here is in txt. So I'll just include everything and hit open. And now it will start loading the files. You can see all of them are loaded here. And then I hit attach. And this should put these files into the vector store. And now, in theory, I can use that vector store. So I have the ID for the vector store here. I copied it just by clicking at it. And let's go back to the document here. And let me scroll up all the way to the prompt itself where I had a placeholder for the vector store. So you can see here between brackets, this is where I need to paste the vector store. So I have the vector store number added. And then I'll just select the whole thing, copy it, and let's go back to the browser. Now we're gonna go actually to our friend Claude with the Claude 3.5 Sonnet, the new one. And here what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paste the prompt as it is. It's ready for Sonnet to actually improve the prompt for us before we go to the Replit agent and build that application that will create the training and validation data for us. So I'll just hit paste, and it got attached basically because it's so long, and I'll just hit go. So as you can see, it already started developing some context for me when it comes to the prompt, and it is asking me for some questions as I prompted it to ask before actually it gives me the final prompt. So I'll answer them and we'll get back to it. So it essentially asked me 4 questions. The first one is, what framework should it use? Is it Python? And I say the most effective and practical, probably it is Python when it comes to doing things with AI. And data in general, Python is usually what is recommended. And then what OpenAI model to use actually to do the creation of those training data sets and validation data sets out of the transcript. I said use the 4o model, and it's asking more information in the second question around what kind of vector store is it? Is it something that is from Pinecone or any other source, and how to access it basically. And I said this is an OpenAI vector store that you can access with the same API key that I can provide. And then for the training data generation, it's asking, do you want a certain way to influence it to do LinkedIn posts? And my response was, I wanted to only be influenced with the way I am talking in the transcripts. And in the last question, it's asking more information about the .srt files. How many hours of transcript is there? And is there any way it is organized? So I said it's not organized, and it's at least 10 hours of me speaking. And I also mentioned that I made them in .txt file formats. So I will respond, and now it should give me the final prompt that I will take and use with the Replit agent. So you can see here, now it's building for me the prompt. And from the documentation, it already got the structure of how the data should be built in the training and validation models. And here it is including the instruction to create a .env file where I can add the vector store ID and the OpenAI API key. I'll actually modify it for Replit agent to use the secrets feature it has, and some error handling and other details based on my original prompt. So I'll copy this whole thing. Now we are ready to go to Replit and start building that application that will get us the files that we need to deliver the fine-tuning for our model. So here we are on Replit, And as you can see, this is the Replit agent building methodology. Of course, you can build in other ways. You can either start a REPL from scratch and select what language. You can as well get something out of GitHub if you have a repository that you want to fork and use here. We want to use the Replit agent. And here is where I describe the app, what I want to create basically. So I just paste the prompt and it got attached, and I will add a modification to whatever was there for it to actually use secrets to keep those variables. So I faced two problems. Before we continue in the video, I have to explain them. The first one is I realized when I tried to run the prompt on Replit, I ran out of Replit agent credits for the day. I'm using it a lot, so I ran out. So I couldn't do that. What I've done is go to Claude, Sonnet 3.5, the new version of it, and I gave it the actual prompt, got the code, and faced a second challenge, which is the ability to access and read the vector store, OpenAI's vector store properly. It's a beta feature. Vector stores in OpenAI is a beta feature. So I got the documentation. I added to Claude. Again, if you remember, I'm not a coder, so I play this game ping pong between AI and the IDE or Replit to try to figure out what's going wrong and how to solve it. So this is one I couldn't figure out myself. So I found a solution. I resorted to actually getting all these documents that contain the transcripts, putting them in the actual application on Replit, and having the same concept of the analysis of these files and creating the training and validation datasets, which worked. So we'll continue from there, and then we go and actually do the training or the fine-tuning of the model, which is the core goal of this video. But I will include the Replit template for you in the description if you want to do something like this. So what you only need to do is actually take transcript files in .txt, not .srt, add them to a folder that I'll show you on the REPL itself, add your OpenAI API, run this application, maybe modify the number of samples you want. I worked with 150. It took a good hour somehow, or less a little bit. And actually you can get your own training and validation data. That's my gift to you out of this video and for watching so far. Okay, so we are back. So you can see this is the successful run I was telling you about. So I have 100% run rate of 150 samples that were changed or modified into actual training and validation data. You can see here I have two files created in the output, the training data JSON file, and I have all of the training content. Also, I have the validation data here, and you can see there's some posts basically talking about different topics that I usually talk about from some of the transcripts I have. Now I added 35 files, 150 actually went through around 8 of them. So if you want to do like a really robust fine-tuning, depending on the size of your transcript, probably you'll have to modify the 150 or minimize the number of files, because everything else I added actually wasn't included in the 150 I put in the code itself. So it is pretty simple, taking text, cutting it, getting the sentiment out of it, creating training data samples, recording it in a document, and we're done. And we have the actual files here. So let us download them. So I'm going to download the validation data. So I've got that. I already downloaded the training data. So that is good. And now we're ready to train our model. So it's very simple. You can do it through the dashboard of OpenAI. No need to do any fancy thing here. So we go to the, I showed you this before, we go to the dashboard of OpenAI. There's the fine-tuning tab that you click on. Once we click on it, we simply hit this big green button, create, and we have to choose a base model. So for this one, I want the latest and greatest, which is 406 of August 2024. And here I have the training data, so I can either select an existing file or upload a new one. So for example, if you have that JSON-L file already uploaded in files, which is also part of the storage tab tab here, you can do that, or you can actually just upload it. So I'll click upload. I'll select the training data here, so it is loaded. It will check if it's a healthy file, and I added a function that validates JSON-L as part of the code, so it's valid, it's good, we can use it. And then validation data, so you can actually skip it. I want to just confirm that what I've done in my training is actually working, so I'll upload the validation data here. I'll select this one and select my validation data here, and it is selected. I'll give it a name. So I named it LinkedIn Post Writer Fine-Tuned. Then you can add a seed or not play with the seed here. And then these are hyperparameters that you can set. So you have the batch size, which is basically, and you can, if you don't know what's the batch size, I have a video I can actually link in the description for you to know about all of these concepts. But if you don't know it and you just don't want to really dig deep into this aspect, you can just simply read it here. What it means, it's the number of example in each batch. A larger batch size means that the model parameters are updated less frequently, but with lower variance defaults to auto. So this is basically the number of samples that are sent off at each stage to be tested in batches. So it's the number of samples per batch, basically. So if I select one, basically each sample in my data set will be tested on its own. If I put two will go together, and so forth. Learning rate multiplier. This is the easiest way to get it, is how fast you want to push your model to train. You have to be careful with it. You can put it high, but then you might basically go to something that's called overfitting, which diminishes the ability of the model to learn, in easy terms. But again, you can hover on the information icon here and read the text, which is scaling factor for the learning rate. A smaller learning rate may be useful to avoid overfitting, defaults to auto. So I'm going to leave all of them auto, by the way. And the last one is the number of epochs. And again, here, the number of epochs to train the model for. An epoch refers to one full cycle through the training data sets, defaults to auto. So for example, I might want to go through my data twice or thrice or 4 times. So you can actually set that here. Be careful. The higher the epochs, the longer the training will happen. I'm going to leave it auto for now. In the future, I might play with this again. Now I have my data set, so I can do this anytime. So I will hit create, and it will start fine-tuning the model based on this training data for me. So I'll hit create here, and it will start working on training this model. So I'm gonna leave it for some time until it's done. Once it's done, we'll see what we can do with it. So it is complete. We have successfully fine-tuned the model. So let me show you a quick glimpse of how that looks actually on the OpenAI dashboard. Now, little while after you train it, you actually get certain aspects to see real time as the model is fine-tuning. So this appears at the end, the token or train tokens. Remember, this is a paid feature. So once you start running the fine-tuning job, you will pay for all the tokens used to train or fine-tune the model. So this is the total number that I'll be charged for. And if you go to the fine-tuning tab on the documentation, you'll see the rates that you will be charged per token. Now, one of the early things that the system will tell you that it's using, because we left it blank as defaults, is the epochs, which is the number of times it will take that training data and actually run it through the fine-tuning model. And here it's selected 3. So each sample will go 3 times, basically. The batch size is 1. So it will basically take each sample or example in the training data in a single batch. So it will go 150 times, because if you remember, we had 150 test samples altogether. Learning rate multiplier, it's 2. Again, this is one of the variables you have to play with to avoid overfitting. As we said, it put the seed. Now these are checkpoints, they appear at the end. These are the files that we selected at the beginning. And this is basically the metrics for the quality of the fine-tuned model. So we have training loss of 0.83, not so good, but not so bad. It's something that we can work with. The validation loss, I think this is considered good. Put a comment in the comment section if you think otherwise. I think this is a good number. Full validation loss, maybe not the best. And again, if you want to understand those terms, you can look them up online, very easy, or you can watch the video that I created around AI and training, and I actually demo playing with these things on a website that helps you visualize AI models and what happens when you train them. And all the links in that video are there. It's an amazing experience if you want to go through it. Essentially, all of these things show you the error when we look at the training data compared to the validation, and then just the validation data compared to data that's generated out of the model without not based on the training data actually. And then here you look at the chart of the span of the training, and at each step you can see, where you get that training loss versus validation loss, and you can see it's trying to reduce it, going down overall. Not a big change, but still good. Here you can look at the messages. Basically, the last message is that the job has successfully completed. You can look at the actual line-by-line metric for the complete fine-tuning job and testing. And I think that is everything you get in terms of information around your fine-tuned model. Regardless, we have a model that we can actually link to an assistant now. So let's move to our assistant. So if you go to the left menu here and you click at assistant, and you'll get all of the assistants that you create or created for yourself in OpenAI. For us, we are looking at the LinkedIn post writer. This is the one that I use in my automation, and this is the one that I want to improve. So if I click at it, we open it here, and you can see it's normal thing. It's my assistant, has a name, it has an ID, it has the instructions, basically the assistant instructions that I fine-tuned so many times to get better results, and that didn't happen. And then I have the model. Now the interesting thing here, now if I click on the model, I can find the fine-tuned model in here. So here I have GPT-4o, which is high intelligence flagship model, yada yada. This is the standard 4o. Remember, I trained it on the August 2024 4o model. So if I scroll down, I want to actually work with the LinkedIn post writer fine-tuned, if you remember the name I gave it. And you can see three. I have three of them, one at step 120, one at step 240, and I assume this is the last one, which is the complete one. Again, it's based on the 4.0 August 2024. They will add those models as we go forward, so the November most recent one might become one of the models that you can fine-tune. So I will select this one, which I assume this is the full trained on the 360 steps that we've seen when we were looking at the details of the fine-tune job. So I will select that. So now every time this assistant is actually asked to provide a post, it will definitely consider the instructions, but it will use a trained model specifically based on my transcript, based on the way I talk in my videos. So that will be interesting. We will actually take it to the playground just to see how it operates with one example. It might not be perfect, but definitely after that I'll show you where it is covered in my automation. I'll just activate it, and in the future, if you're interested, drop me a comment here. Maybe I would say in a couple of weeks I'll be able to make a judgment if there's a big improvement or not, or I might just make a community post. So subscribe for you to see this kind of update in my community. So let's go to the playground here, and I'll test it with something simple. So I'm asking it, write me a LinkedIn post on basic AI fine-tuning parameters, because we talked about it now. So I'll just hit run and see what we get. So give it a second to run. Again, now it's not running on the original one, or the basic 4.0, it's running on my 4.0. So let's see how it actually words the post. Ever wondered why your AI model isn't quite hitting the mark? So let me just scroll to the right. I stumbled upon some insights that might just change the game for you. Fine-tuning AI isn't just about the data, it's about the details. Have you been tweaking your learning rate lately? Let's dive into the basics of AI fine-tuning that could elevate your project. Learning rate, batch size, epochs. I took 3 months to apply these adjustments, and transformation was incredible. Each tweak brought me closer. It's very, very hard to judge. I think it's more human-like. compared to any other post I got. Now, I'll have to go back to the drawing board when it comes to the instructions here. But I will play with my instructions to minimize the effect on the actual train model. I want the model to be closer to how I fine-tuned it, less influenced by the instructions. So I'm going to do that. But I can tell it is definitely more human-like than any other post I ever gotten out of this assistant, with all the assistant instruction tweaks I've done over months so far. So I can see some impact. Is it enough? That's actually something to test on LinkedIn. So that's the battleground, regardless of what I think. I'm going to activate those automations and see how people react to the new posting. I will work with this a little bit in terms of instructions, and actually the temperature is pretty high for this one, so let me reduce it down to 0.7, so it's less random, and I think this is something to work with now. So now let me just take you, it's not longer than necessary, it's already long for a video, so let me take you again to my automations. Now if you remember, I explained that I have this feedback loop. I'm going to keep it off for some time for me to judge a little bit how the model is operating in the posts I'm getting on LinkedIn. And then after that, if this is like really doing the job that I hope it will do, after I think I paid like $4 all in all for doing everything I've done today in this video. So if it does the job, I'll activate those and see where it goes with the feedback loop and just looking how people react to posts and modifying the instructions based on a fine-tuned model now used in my assistant. In any of them, now you'll take a glimpse. I'm happy to cover a video around these automations. If you're interested, write a comment in the comment section. But basically, let's take one of them. If I open it, there's many steps, but at some point at each step, there's this conversation with assistant, and you can see it's the LinkedIn post writer, and now it's fine-tuned. So now it will get all of this information, and hopefully it will start responding differently. So it's been a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. You know, there's so many applications for fine-tuning. I think that not so many people are using it for. So you can, this is like the step where if you're frustrated, you can't get your assistant to do more closer to what you want it to do, and you're fed up, try to find that training data or the source of that training data, figure it out with Claude or with Replit agent and create that training and validation data through an application. If you have it as structured information already, perfect, you have something great. Also, AI can help you just put the pieces together and prepare it in a .jsonl file that you can actually do for fine-tuning. Fine-tune it, play with it, and see what you get. I think this is something you only do when there's no more you can do when it comes to prompting. Prompting is very strong, but if that fails, this is where you go and try to fine-tune. I promised you I'm going to give you an update in a couple of months, maybe a couple of weeks, depending on how I see the influence, depending on the effect of the instructions, the temperature. I'll have to keep tweaking these things. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got value out of it. I hope you play with it, experiment with it yourself. Do not forget to write your comment, engage with me. That's the most important thing for me. And hit subscribe button if you're not a subscriber. I would love for you to be part of my community, helping you hopefully do better in your personal and career life when it comes to AI and technology. And like the video as well, share it with others if you think they will benefit. And with this, thank you for watching and goodbye.
Subscribe to Daddy's channel. Give me the mic.